Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Squirtle Hoops Playoff Preview Show. My name is Michael Swisher, and I'm joined by an expert panel as we get set for the OSSAA basketball playoffs over the next few weeks here in Oklahoma. We're taping this on a Wednesday night, so that means in less than 24 hours, it will be playoff time in Oklahoma. And that panel I talked about, the illustrious Mark Rogers, we've got Tom Nelson, Joe Adkins. Doesn't get much better than this. Of course, Mark Rogers, middle of the day show on WWLS, the sports animal. He landed the interview of the country today when he had on Derek Bull of the Weatherford Eagles. Nationwide, everybody was talking about that, and Mark landed him on his show. So, Mark, great job on
Thank you,
that.
Swish.
Great interview there today. Tom Nelson, the voice of Squirtle, if you will, one of the great play-by-play voices that we have here on Squirtle. We'll see a lot of him throughout the playoffs, and we've seen him all season long as he's covered a lot of games for us here on Squirtle.tv. And then we got a first-timer with us tonight in Joe Adkins. You guys know the name, you know the face. And, man, talk about an Oklahoma Preps legend. Of course, part of that John Marshall teams back in the 95-96, undefeated in football and basketball. They were kind of decent, and Joe was kind of decent on that team. Of course, he was a player of the year that year, went on to an All-American career at Oklahoma State University, and now a self-professed basketball junkie. Joe, welcome to Squirtle.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Mark,
Well,
Mark, you take all that down now. That's how I want to be introduced from now on, buddy, when I come on the show.
Props legend. That's how it is from now on. That's all that matters.
Well, I mean, yeah, you got the career to back it up, so we got to hype you up, and we're happy to have you on here. So obviously, Class A and B, they get started first, but we're going to get to them last. We're going to start at the top, Class 6A, and work our way down. Of course, they're a couple weeks away from really getting into their playoffs, but we're going to start on the girls' side. Edmond North comes in this year as the defending state champion, knocked off Bixby last year. Right now, Edmond North looks like the team to beat in 6A girls, undefeated thus far, has a win over Bixby. Of course, Bixby's, not 100% this season. Mark, we'll start with you. How are you looking at those 6A girls playoffs going?
Well, I think the 6A girls playoffs, that the East bracket is a little bit weaker than the West side. In the West, you've got Edmond North, you've got Edmond Memorial, you also have Putnam West. PC West is underrated. They've lost 2 games to teams that are rated nationally in the top 20. Duncanville is one of them. Also, Sierra Canyon, where that's just where LeBron's kids go. So that's okay program. That they're really good. I think that somebody comes out of that bracket to win it. Edmond North, undefeated, defending state champs. They'll be tough to beat. Edmond lost to them earlier in the season, but I just think that it's a good class, very competitive this year. But I'm going to go with Edmond North. I'd say the dark horse is Putnam West.
All right, Joe, you agree with Mark? You got some different picks for us.
Well, I think it's hard to go against Edmond North based on the way they played this season. But I'm like, well, I do agree, and I think they're the best team. And if they play at their best, they're going to be state champions. But if they have an off night now, there are a couple teams that I feel can beat them. Edmond Memorial with Janiyah Williams, she's been out. She missed a few weeks where she hadn't played. She was having some hip problems, and now she's getting back into play. So I think if she's healthy, they'll be able to compete with the Edmond North. As Mark said, PC West, I really like them. And I think my dog horse is going to be on the other side, although Booker T is the top seed at number 1 or 2, or number 1 on the east side. They're really good, but I'm going to take Norman and Keedy Parks and what Frankie Parks has done over there. As you know, I like the Stars, and those guys are really the most highly recruited girls in the state of Oklahoma, and most that I just talked about are ranked nationally. So I think those players, because they have so much experience of playing in much bigger atmospheres, that they're able to shine in moments like this.
Joe, you like Stars. It's a shame you didn't get to see me play in high school. I'd moved away to Alabama, so I didn't get to bless OK Preps. But there's a reason they call me Swish, and we'll just leave it at that. Tom, what are you seeing there in 6A girls?
I think that we're all in agreement that Edmond North is probably the team to beat. 69-4 their last 3 seasons, coming into last night or tonight's game, they played last night, I guess. But your state champions a year ago. 14-0 against ranked teams this season. They've had one game that's been within 10 points all season long. I think they are the team to beat just because been there, done that, and still pretty darn good. I had a chance to see PC West last night. They played up here in Enid. They're long and explosive, got 4 6'8", 6-foot tall girls. They get up and down the floor. They run in 5 players at a time. They press, and it was funny because Enid was only down 13-6 at the end of the first quarter, but then PC West outscored them 36-2 in the second quarter, just up and down the floor. I got a big girl, Jasmine Adams. She's a post player, and they get the ball to her. She's got, good sized body, can just work it inside, and she was finishing all night long. So but they've got a lot of good players. And I'm going to say Norman, another contender for me. They've been there with the titles in 2019, 2021. They've won 8 of their last 9 ball games. And then my dark horse is Broken Arrow. They're 8-6 against ranked teams this season. They've won 7 of 9, and they're coming out of the East Side, which might give them a chance to make a run, at least get to the state tournament. I don't know if they're going to win the darn thing, but getting to the state tournament is where I consider a dark horse. So
I like Mackenzie Matherin on Broken Arrow's team. She's a sophomore. I think she's going to be a player that really gets a lot more notoriety as she gets older. She's a good player. I like Tom's pick there.
Valentine's Day, Edmond North will host Edmond Memorial, second matchup of the season. So Memorial with a chance right there to make a statement before the playoffs get started. We'll see if it happens. Let's move along to 6A boys now. Your defending champ, Edmond North, broken record here, as the Huskies got it done a year ago down in Norman. Right now, we got a team over on the east side that's undefeated in Broken Arrow. Let's start with you, Joe. Broken Arrow, Edmond North, East West. You got somebody else in mind who could bring home that gold ball?
Well, I think actually there are a few teams in 6A. I think Edmond North, although they've had a couple losses, maybe a couple upsets, I think they're truly the best team. They're championship ready. They're going for a repeat. They have probably the best player, a guy who's played the best, probably arguably in the state this year, in T.O. Barrett, the junior, along with Dylan Wyckoff, of course. So I think it's going to be tough to beat them. And, I like BA and what they've done. They've been consistent all season with Connor Dow, and they have a lot of size. It'll be interesting to see in the second round who they match up against, when you have a PC North. I think they're a team that can win it as well. I think really those 3 teams are the only teams that can win it. Now, I think Owasso with my former teammate, Mont Nadi, he has his team playing well right now. And Lenny Burton, PC West, they always find a way to put themselves in this time of year. They find their way in state. So I think some of those teams are to watch, but I really think it's going to be out of those 3 teams that I feel that'll be state champions. And that's either Edmond North, BA, and Broken Arrow, or PC North.
Of course, Owasso and Booker T, the subject this week of a little flip-flop in the rankings. OSSA discovered an error in the tabulations, and so they flip-flop 4 and 5, Owasso and Booker T, and you think, well, maybe that's not a big deal. That's 4 and 5. Well, that's the difference between hosting and traveling in that regional. So it kind of is a big deal. Tom, what are you thinking? You gonna go out there with Joe, or you got somebody else for us?
Well, I kind of like Broken Arrow myself over on the east side. They're 19, or the only undefeated team in 6A so far. They were tested early on, and I went to Florida, played some games down there. Got really good size, as Joe said. Connor Dow is going to go to OSU. He can shoot it, 6'4", I think. A good player. Contenders like Edmond North, they've won 8 straight since losing to Crossings, the Tournament of Champions. PC North is 11-1 against ranked teams this season, and I'm going to be a total homer for my dark horse because they're a year or 2 away, but I'm going to say nice things about the Enid Plainsmen. They're young, got a couple of really good sophomores. Next year, the year after, they can keep the band together. I think they'll be really good. I've been watching them all year long from a courtside seat. I saw them play. They're up 15 last night on PC West and gave it up in the fourth quarter. That's the kind of team they are right now. But I think I'll call them my dark horse. Who knows what happens? They get on a run, at least might make a run to the playoffs. They got some good players, but they're very young.
That's the key for Enid. It's not singular to them, but, for them to be able to keep their guys there, because there are a lot of places in that area that can kind of pull away from them. Of course, we see it all over the place, but it's really affected Enid over the years. Mark, who are you looking at in 6A?
I'll jog to Enid if they win the state championship this year. Tom is incessantly running for office there, so
Wait,
I'm sure that he's going to get a lot of
will you
votes.
jog? Will you jog from Norman or will you jog from Wacomas? Well, I mean, there's a big. What are we talking here?
Well, it'll be a run walk, but I mean, I think that they are young and they've had a good season this year to get to where they are, but I don't know that they're going to be able to compete. I do think the bracket is wide open here. I think that David Howell, I really like at BA. He's a sophomore on that team. They are tall, they're athletic across the board. I've seen Putnam North. Joe and I saw a great game last night between Norman and Westmore that was won on an incredible shot at the buzzer. I think the East is way stronger than the West. You look at Owasso, who has freshmen playing. Jalen Montanati is scored. He's one of the top players in the country in his class. So I think that they're going to be tough to beat. Putnam West seated 7th. Joe and I called the game of the week at Putnam West where they beat Putnam North. So they could win that conference and still be seated 7th on their side of the state, while Putnam North is seated 2nd. And I don't want to get on the soapbox, but you absolutely need to make a change now. The season has to finish before you see these teams. It's ridiculous that they seed them now. It renders games irrelevant through the rest of the season. Some schools have 5 and 6 games left before the end of the year because of cancellations due to snow. And it's a terrible rule. And I think it really does cause some problems and does really discriminate against some teams that have a real chance. And so I think that this 6A bracket is kind of unbalanced to the east side. So I think Edmond North's got to be considered the favorite. Broken Arrow could win it. Putnam West could win it. Owasso could win it. Bixby could win it. There's a lot of teams that could win it. I think it's going to be a great state tournament.
And you make
Now,
a good point
Mark,
there. Go ahead, Tom.
Mark, aren't at the brackets in 6A and 5A? Don't they set those locations ahead of time, neutral sites? So it wouldn't necessarily be that hard to wait until the end of seed.
100%. You could have host sites, and then you could see the brackets where still a team could host, but might not be the top seed there. And I think it's more important to get the teams right rather than worry about who's got the home court advantage. For example, Putnam North and Putnam West. The game earlier this year at Putnam West, a great representation of Putnam North crowd there. But still, it's more important, I think, than to get the best teams in the right spots. And hey, I'm totally joking, Enid. It's been a great season for you guys. If you win state, I will gladly walk, run, and put my life on the line if you guys win it all. Go Plainsmen.
And
Need
I
the
think
exercise.
It is important to note. I mean, obviously, it'd be easier in this day and age of technology and the way we do things to wait to seed those things. But also, it is, I think, important to note that a lot of these things are done on the movement of, it starts with the coaches. What does the Coaches Association want? I'm not going to pretend to know that I know that how 6A and 5A coaches have felt about this, but usually
I've talked to a lot of coaches. The coaches say that the association doesn't listen to them. There's a lot of things out there that are problematic that I think need to be worked out. But I think that we're kind of at this time where you mentioned the bracket or the rankings come out on Monday, and the association has basically failed to throw out the highest vote and the lowest vote. Yeah. Therefore, they have to correct who's hosting, and it leads to a lot of upset people. So I think, I love the association. I love those guys. I think they do a great job. I think they've got a tough job, but I think that we've got to come to some change here because it's not working right the way it is now.
Yeah, and I've always felt, they could wait a little bit longer, with the smaller classes too. But man, I don't want that job either. So there you go. Your 6A picks from our expert panel. So we're going to make the bump now down to 5A girls. McAllister, the state champion a year ago, brought home that gold ball, but Sapulpa really strong this year. And then Carl Albert on this side, although Carl Albert recently got, I say this side, the west side, which side I live on. Carl Albert recently got beat by Piedmont at home, Piedmont number 2. So do you guys see any teams out there? We're going to start with you, Tom. Send it to you. Who do you see being able to hoist that gold ball?
Well, you look at the Division I athlete pedigree at over at Sapulpa. You've got the McCorders sisters, and you've got the Hurd twins, or not twins but sisters, and that's quite a team. Sapulpa, they won the state championship 2 years ago. They won the Tournament of Champions over in Arkansas earlier this year. It's funny, Staley and Tyler Hurd, their dad, Tony, who I played at Tulsa, correct? I called his games at Seward County Community College back in the day in Kansas. I had a chance to watch him play. He's one of the best players in JUCO basketball that year that he was there. So I like Sapulpa to win it. They're 6-1 against top 10 teams this year. Piedmont and Carl Albert, to me, are the contenders. Piedmont beat Carl Albert by 1 point in late January. My dark horse is MacArthur. They've won 11 of 12, 5-5 against ranked teams, and all their losses are to ranked teams. That's what I think about 5A girls.
So you calling Tony Hurd's games? That's
Where did Tony Hurd go to high school? I don't remember.
He played with a pretty good guy, man. He played with a pretty good guy in the state of Oklahoma, man.
John Marshall, is that right?
Yep, John Marshall. Only John Marshall. He only played with the player of the year that season, you know.
Well, he was a heck of a player at Seward County. I was doing games for Dodge City Community College, but he was the Jayhawk Conference, and I believe he was All-American and the Jayhawk Conference Player of the Year. He could hoop at Seward County.
Yes, no doubt. Those girls, they got it honestly. They got it honestly.
If you just joined us and you don't know who the player of the year was, go to the beginning of the show and you can find that out.
They paid Tom that year in a cow. He got a cow. He wasn't quite sure what to do with it at Dodge City. So he had to find a place to either put it out to pasture or get it slaughtered. So I think the story turned out the wrong way.
I will tell you this. If you would ask, I guarantee you I don't know this, but you could ask him what he remembers of Liberal, Kansas, and he would talk about the smell. I guarantee you.
No, no doubt.
All right, Joe, give us your 5A girls picks.
Yeah, I think Sapulpa is the favorite. As Tom just spoke of the Herd girls, my nieces, I've watched them grow up since they were kids. It's going to be hard to go against them because Staley Herd, she's been phenomenal all season. Headed to Oklahoma State here in the fall, so I think they are the team to beat. I like Piedmont as well as Carl Albert, and probably that'll be the 2-3. If everything goes well, they'll play in probably the semis. But my dark horse, I'm gonna go with El Reno and Jennifer Douglas, a friend of mine, coaches in the BTR organization. So I watched her coach some of the best players in the state. She's I think was it last year they got to the state finals. Yep. So I'm gonna go with her as my dark horse again, and El Reno. Look out for them, and maybe they can sneak in and maybe upset Sapulpa.
Mark?
Holland Hall found out they're going to play in Class 5A in the middle of the season instead of Class 4A, and I think it's a break for them in girls basketball. As Class 4A is loaded, Class 5A doesn't seem to be quite as tough. So I think they could be a dark horse. They've had 2 close losses this year. Sapulpa is the favorite. I think it runs through them. Carl Albert is very, very good and probably should be considered the co-favorite there. But you mentioned Swiss, they did lose to Piedmont last week. So it should be a good class. I think it's going to come, the winner's going to come between Carl Albert and Sapulpa.
Piedmont's scary because if they get hot, they're going to shoot a lot of threes. If they get hot, they can be a dangerous team. And that's kind of, they led that whole game against Carl Albert. Cannot say Piedmont, not mention my niece, Kaylee Marshall. Of course, she's more a volleyball player, but I got to give my family props as well. Let's go over to the boys' side. No surprise here as Tulsa Memorial won the state championship last year, beat Del City in the finals. Memorial, of course, one of those storied programs in Oklahoma. Top seed on the east side, Carl Albert. Again, no big surprise. Top seed on the west. Mark, we'll start with you. What are you looking at out of the 5A boys?
Wide open. Carl Albert has been good all season long. I think Del City has played a tough schedule and played games close, and clearly they were the runner-up last year, have a chance to win. Memorial's been rebuilding. I don't think they're as good as they were a year ago, and so that's why I think it's a little more wide open. Edison and Hale have been really good in Tulsa public schools. Hale played Memorial right down to the wire earlier this week. To me, the team that's a dark horse is Southeast. They're rated 4th. They had a great chance to knock off Broken Arrow earlier this year. They had a good run last year at the state tournament. And to have them 4th in the west side is pretty tough for some of those other teams there. Brandon Jackson has done a really nice job at Piedmont. He went from Mount St. Mary's there, and then Andre Dawkins, who played for Coach K at Duke, took over for him as an assistant. I think Mount St. Mary is pretty good too. I think the boys in 6A and 5A might not seem like they're wide open, but they're wide open. So I think a lot of teams could win it. My favorite would be Carl Albert. My dark horse is Southeast.
And Mark, you mentioned it for the girls. I don't, and we'll talk about 4A later, but it being wide open 5A, I don't think Holland Hall boys just hate it either.
No,
Because
all.
there's not that dominant team. Not that there's a dominant team in 4A necessarily, and we'll get on that, but Holland Hall might have a better chance just numbers wise in 5A. Tom, let's go to you for your picks.
Yeah, this was tough to pick because you're exactly right, Mark. It is wide open. I do like Carl Albert as well. 3 losses to ranked 6A schools this year. They've got 8 ranked wins. Tulsa Memorial, of course, you know what they've done for their last 5 titles in 5A. Del City, another contender. My dark horse, and when I picked my dark horses, when I was doing my homework today on this, I went down in the ratings a little bit. Yeah, Enid. We've already done that. We've seen that once, but went down in the trying to find a team that not necessarily is going to win a state championship, but is going to maybe get to the state tournament, which would be a great season for them. And that's why I'm going to throw El Reno out there right now. A lot of experience. Carter Roman knows a good player for them. They got lost in the area tournament a year ago. They got a lot of those guys back. I think El Reno might be a squad that could make a little run and maybe get to the Final 8, Class 5A.
Joe?
When you talk about 5A, I agree with both guys where I do think it is wide open. But there's a couple teams that I also in the tournament time, I like experience. Although using Ty Frederickson last year, Memorial, they're going to be there. I expect them to be there. They have a lot of guys that actually played in those games last year and now have stepped into much bigger roles. Carl Albert has probably been the most consistent team all season. They played really well. And I think the program over the last 10 years, Carl Albert is second to none. I think them and Memorial has kind of just dominated 5A. So I expect them to be there. But I like Del City. They played an extremely tough schedule, and they have size in Brandon Garrison. I think he has the ability to impact games where he can take over. And in tournament play, I think it's more important for guys like that because he's so big and can affect the game in other ways besides just scoring it. I do like El Reno. They've been really good all season. They don't have a lot of size. And if they run up against a couple of those other teams in Carl Albert, Memorial, and Del City, that's the one thing they have is size and athleticism. And I don't know if El Reno can match it. If they shoot it well, then they can really play and they can really extend any of those teams and win on any given night, though. I'm like Mark, my dark horse is Southeast. I really like Fields and Graham, that backcourt. They were phenomenal last season as they got to the state semifinals before being knocked out by Memorial. Those guards, if they play well, they can beat anyone in the state. And they can win this, and they can win 5A. But they've been so inconsistent this season. They're not as big. They lost some guys last year that probably were more valuable than they thought they would be. They just lack so much size. So those guards have to play extremely well, but they're capable. Like Mark, I like my nephew's team in Piedmont. They played extremely well. I like Mount Sarah as well. The one thing about Holland Hall and you guys, I know they're a really good team. They're coached by Teddy Owens, a good friend of mine. 4A is called so much different than 5A. And coming in during the middle of the season, I don't know if they're good enough and as talented enough on the 5A level to make that adjustment to win it all. I think they will be in state, and I think they'll compete and play with anyone. But I just think the physicality is so much different for those guys when you prepare to play one certain way and they say, okay, now you're going to play more physical. And I don't know if they have the guys with as far as athleticism and just physicality. They are really good with Cool on the interior. They have a couple guards that are really good. But I think they're a year away because I think they need to make that adjustment in being there. I think they're a team that for the future, maybe next year with guys losing and things changing, I think they could be the favorite because they have a lot of guys coming back.
Yeah, really good point there. There is a huge difference in the way those games are called. Just that, that one classification, it makes a whole difference. Now, are Tommy Griffin and Tonjel Durham both still hoping Lenny Hatchett this year at Del City? Are both of them still with him? Most
Yes.
Overqualified assistants you'll find, especially Tommy Griffin. I know Tonjel won several at Bishop McGinnis. Of course, Tommy coached you at John Marshall, and then he coached a couple of other kids at OCS. I can't think of their names right now. I heard they were okay too.
Yeah.
But yeah, just what a coaching staff that is over at Del City. So those are your 5A picks. So we're going to drop down to 4A, and we move away from the East-West split that they do, and it's just one huge bracket for everybody. Again, we're going to start on the girls' side. It's Lincoln Christian, the number one team in 5A. Of course, last year was Classen School of Advanced Studies, had just that awesome performance in the state championship game, knocked off the defending state champion Tuttle when it knocked them off, beat them 55-22. Of course, Tuttle's still right back there in the mix, got a new coach this year. Their old coach is the one who put these brackets together, Brian Lester. The new coach is Jamie Combs this year, but Tuttle's ranked number 2. Bethany's loaded. Lincoln Christian, we saw them at Mark there at the Tournament of Champions this year. Class 4A, you look at that on the girls' side, and there's a lot of quality teams there.
Brian Lester's got an impossible job. The association's got to make it easier on him. You have to separate girls and boys. You can't send the girls and the boys in the same bracket where you have to account for seeding teams and the girls and boys teams. Sometimes they're good. Kingfisher's got both good girls and boys teams. Some others do, but others don't. I think it's completely unfair. And to me, the 4A brackets are way unbalanced. Regional 1 or Area 1 is incredibly tough. Area 4 isn't quite as tough. The teams from the Western Oklahoma Athletic Conference have had an amazing year. In the first area, you've got Bethany and McGinnis, which could easily be an area game, maybe a Friday game at area to determine who gets to play to go to state, but it's a district tournament game this year. So Blanchard is another team that's been to state 2 years in a row, but they're not really even remotely seated in that first area. So I think they've got to figure some things out to change there. But I think probably I will have some one of the members of the panel agree with me on this. This is the most difficult class to win. There are more good teams in Class 4A than I think there are in any other bracket. Kingfisher is the 2-time defending state champs. They had an injury to Mecklenburg, which is going to cost them. I think depth isn't huge at Kingfisher, but those guys have the experience to win. They've got a really good team on defense. But I think Douglas is the team to beat here. They are extremely athletic. They're young. They're kind of playing with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They've had a difficult schedule, and I think that they're going to be really, really difficult to beat. That doesn't mean they can't be beat. Weatherford is really good in this class. I'm extremely impressed with Jaden Nickens, JJ Nickens, who went up over the 1,000-point mark last night. JJ Nixon, I'm sorry, and then CJ Nixon.
We'll get there.
Bad. Thank you. And I think that, again, there's a lot of other teams in there. Crossings is really good. We saw them beat Kingfisher at the Tournament of Champions. I like their backcourt. I like Cal Furnish. Phoenix Woodson is a really good freshman that's gotten better as the season's gone along. But I'm going to say Douglas is the champion. There's really any number of dark horses. There could be a lot of teams that challenge them and win, but the state tournament's going to be the best of all of them.
Okay, so I think your brain flipped a switch in there.
It did.
Midway through, you went from girls to boys on us there. So we started out talking girls, or at least I thought we were.
I thought we're talking boys. I can talk girls too if you want me to.
Well, no, we'll stay with the boys right now. But yeah, Mark, you made some really good points there. But when you I thought we were talking girls, and you said 2-time defending champs, and I really started scratching my head. But yeah, the boys side. We talk about the girls side being, a lot of good teams. Boys side.
I got off on my tangent about having to do the districts with both boys and girls teams going to the same places.
Yeah,
it's tough to do.
I had a follow-up question there, but you made the jump on me and messed it up. But I mean, I've told people that at least 6 teams I think have a legit shot at winning 4A boys, and you named off some of them. Tom, agree, disagree? Who are you looking at? And then Tom
muted himself.
There we go.
I didn't mean to leave out OCS. They're part of that 6 too, and probably Newcastle as well. But
yeah, I before I found out that Kingfisher had an injury, I've got Kingfisher winning it again. They've won 3 of the last 4 state championships. The one year they didn't win it, COVID won, and that's just so sad because they could have had had a great run. Probably would have won the state championship that year too. And you mentioned Crossings, Weatherford, Douglas, OCS. I got them all written down there as contenders. It is wide open. And once again, using my dark horse as being somebody from down a little bit that might have a chance to make a run and play into the second week of March. I'm going to throw out there Tuttle, 6-5 against ranked teams, 4 wins against the top 10, and also Catoosa. They've got 3 wins against the top 10. They can put up points. I'd like to see Catoosa play. They scored 114 against Locust Grove and 100 against Alva. They must be going up and down the floor, but just getting you a bunch of teams in 5A that or 4A, excuse me, that it's so wide open. I think there's a lot of opportunities there for teams to win the gold ball.
Yeah, Tuttle last night beat Newcastle. Impressive win there. Tuttle definitely one of those teams. For each of the last 3 or 4 years, I've expected them to be at the state tournament. They haven't made it. This might be the team that gets there. They might have a pretty good draw this year. Joe, what are you looking at in the 4A boys?
Well, I agree with it, Mark, and I think I was the guy that would agree that 4A. I think just from when you take the amount of quality teams as far as from top to bottom, I think it's the most competitive class in the state by far. I think you can't count out Kingfisher, the heart of a champion, back-to-back state champs. They should have been probably three in a row. Although the injury, I think it hurts them because they don't have a lot of depth and they're not as talented offensively as they've been in the past, but they have had success in that tradition. They've won big games. But I think, like Mark, I just think Douglas is the best team. I think they're the team to beat. Maybe a little bit underrated. And as Mark said, they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. Probably the most talked about team from start to finish because they added a few transfers and Terry McMorris and Jace Breath. So early on in the season, it was an uproar going, but they've only one loss to a 6A PC North team. And so I think they've been battle tested. They played Dale City. They went to Newcastle and won the Newcastle tournament in probably what people have said was probably the best game that they've seen throughout the season. And to go win on someone's home floor and basically be a road game, although it was a tournament, I think that just shows that they're tough and ready. I like their team. I think Weatherford with CJ Young, they have an opportunity. I like Crossings with the size because they actually can match size with Douglas. The athleticism, they're going to have some problems, but Cal Frost does a really good job. If he can handle the pressure of Douglas, I think they'll have a chance because they can neutralize some of the interior because the size with the freshman Woodson. But my dark horse is Newcastle. Jesse Brown, they've knocked on the door the last 2 seasons, haven't been able to get there with a transfer of Carshawn Young. He's been phenomenal for the most part of the season. So I think Newcastle finally gets over the hump and gets to state. And if they get the right draw, they can get into that second day and they can scare anyone on that Friday evening.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see the team, if there is the team out there against Douglas who can slow them down, frustrate them offensively, and how will they respond in that one thing you talk about, Joe, is how games are called. A lot of these teams that they played are bigger schools. And we see that a lot with some of these 4A schools when they get into the playoffs in a state tournament. Then the game's called a little bit different than they used to. They have to adjust to that as well. That can be an adjustment there. Of course, I mean, just the tradition that Douglas has, it's one of the best programs in the state. But man, they are certainly talented this year. Tom, what are you looking at? Sound like I was trying to pick a fight. Tom, what are you looking at? How about hit that unmute button? Oh man, these radio guys. I mean,
hey, I gotta apologize to CJ Nixon. I mean, I messed. It's hard for me to get him confused with Jaden Nickens sometimes at Millwood. Both really, really good players. Names are kind of close, but he's an incredible sophomore that has played so well this year. I
ironically in the game that is 4-2,
he scored all 4.
Everybody was talking about he scores all 4, and ironically he hits a scoring plateau, 1,000 points, and again, just a sophomore. I've seen this kid play 4, 5, 6, 7 times. He's a legit basketball player.
His fourth quarter at Kingfisher, which I watched the game that you called Swish. It was amazing down the stretch.
And that's not a fluke. I mean, that's what he does. He can hit shots from anywhere on the field. He's got great feet. He's a big kid. Man, he moves so well. He's a lot of fun to watch. Weatherford's going to be a tough out for anybody. So, Tom, did you figure out the unmute button yet? Radio
yeah,
guy?
I think I did. Now I got to figure out something else. Are we talking 4A boys or 4A girls?
We're still on 4A boys for now.
Okay, well, okay. You want me to recap because I've already said it.
Well, see, I'm really lost then. See,
okay, I'm going on 4A girls right now. Let's go back to where I started. This is an unbelievable class as well. Lincoln Christian, Tuttle, Bethany, Weatherford is really, really good. Maddie Stewart, Coach Stewart's daughter at Lincoln, started at the Tournament of Champions. She's only a freshman. I think that she may be the difference in this Lincoln Christian team who's been in Class 3A the last couple of years, that they can ascend from Class 3A to Class 4A. and potentially win it. Bethany, loaded, talented, young players, old players that are there. But I was surprised that Tuttle beat them earlier in the year, and that is no disrespect to Tuttle. With Landry Allen, they're really good. So I think it's a 3 or 4 team race there. Harding Prep is also pretty good, but I'm going to say that Lincoln is the state champ. And if anybody, it's not really fair to call those other teams dark horses because they're legit contenders.
Well, one thing that Tuttle can do is defend. You know, we've got Landry in the middle, but there's a lot of work that has to be done to even get to Landry in the middle for teams, and that's what they were able to do against that just awesomely talented Bethany team. Was just really frustrate them with their defense, and that's kind of Tuttle's calling card. Okay, Tom, 4A girls.
I tell you what, Lincoln Christian's having a heck of a season. They're beating good, bigger schools. They're taking on all comers. 5 top 10, top 5 wins this season. Only lost to Sapulpa. So I think that Lincoln Christian's my odds-on favorite to win the state championship. I like Tuttle again, the runner-up in 4A a year ago. 12 straight wins since the Bertha Teague tournament. You mentioned Bethany. The one thing about Bethany, I noticed their schedule, a little bit of a weak schedule. I haven't played quite as tough a schedule as some of the other teams in Tuttle or Lincoln Christian. And then because I've seen them, I'm more familiar with them, Kingfisher. I kind of like to see what Kingfisher can do, see if they can at least get a run to the second day of the state tournament. And my dark horse, once again, don't know if they can win state, but they've been there enough to know. And my storyline is, can they make it for a 19th year? And that is Fort Gibson. They've been to the state tournament 18 straight years. They've got to get through a tough regional. They got to play Anadarko and Manford at regionals, and then got to get through Oologah and Kingfisher in the area tournament. But the storyline is if they can take that record-long state tournament streak and make it 19.
Joe?
Well, like these two guys, I have to agree again. I think Lincoln Christian is probably the favorite. I think they have a win over Sapulpa in the Tournament of Champions, although Sapulpa came back a week later and avenged that loss. So they shows that they can play with any level. But I'm gonna go with Tuttle. I like Tuttle, and I'm gonna say this for the same reason that I felt Classen won. They won a state championship, and last year they were basically embarrassed versus the Classen team with that Dariana Buggs, Jordan Harrison, and that group. I think they get back. Because they want to avenge that. Landry Allen, a dominant inside interior offensively and defensively, so she can change any game because she can control the paint, and with her athleticism, she can score inside. I like Bethany with both the Van girls and with Keziah Lofton. That they're definitely guard oriented. So those 3 guards, if they play well, they can beat anybody because they can all 3 score and hit you for 20 to 25 points in each night. But my sleeper is going to be Ada. Ada with Sanaya Richardson, probably one of the most entertaining players to see in the state in 4A, and also ranked in top 15 in her class. I Ada, the 5'4" guard, is can go for 40 at any time, as she went over 1,000 points earlier in the season as well in her sophomore campaign. So I'd like her. She can take over any game and score 40 and win a game by herself. So I'll take Sanaya Richardson and Ada as my dark horse.
Dariana Buggs went from dominating the state tournament to dominating the Big 12. And so I know what it's like to shoot craps against Joe because he and I bet on last year's state championship, and I had Tuttle and he had Classen, and it was a 30-point beatdown. So I think I still am indebted to Joe on that one.
No doubt.
One thing about Landry Allen, I think this year she's really developed a really good mid-range offensive game that I hadn't noticed as much the last couple of years, and I've even seen her, drop back and hit a couple of threes. But that when she develops that mid-range offensive part of her game to go with what she's already got on defense, man, it's really impressive to watch her play. So there are your 4A picks. Although we kind of went around about it, even made Tom try to go twice a couple of times there. But now we're going to go to 3A girls. And Tom, I'm going to start with you on 3A girls, and hopefully I don't come back to you. But Jones, you've seen Jones, 2-time defending champs. We call the Jones game together at the Wheat Capital tournament up in Chisholm earlier this year. Defeated Idabel last year. Washington right now, the undefeated top-ranked team in the class. Are you looking at Washington, Jones, or maybe a Bethel team that I think won the Mid-America earlier this year as well?
Yeah, I've got Washington. That's my favorite, 21-0, good mix of experience. Has got some talented freshmen as well. And then you're right, I've seen Jones a little bit last couple of years, as a matter of fact, at the Wheat Capital tournament at Chisholm High School. Got Jones and Bethel as my contenders, so I give you 3 there. Washington, Jones, and Bethel. Bethel, a couple of losses to Dale and 1 to Caddo, but they returned 7 players from a state tournament team from a year ago as well. My dark horse is somebody else that I saw, Silo. Saw Silo lose to Dale in the Cashin tournament. And Tiani Ellison, she's a really, really good player, 6 foot tall, scored 25 points in the game that I saw. So Silo's my dark horse. So I will take Washington. Boy, I tell you what, they're having a fantastic season.
Yeah, it's not new to success down there at Washington.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, Joe?
I do like Washington. They've been the most consistent all year. They're 22-0. So I think they're capable of winning it. But me, I gotta go with Jones. Back-to-back state championships already. The heart of a champion. 3 girls returning. They were on our list earlier. Mark and I, our preseason list, we had them in, so we saw them. So I think it's just hard to beat a team like that with the experience and knowing how to win in this time of year. I think is also so important. I like Ida Bell. Ida Bell, I think they have a good chance with the big girl in the middle, 6'7". She's gotten in better shape and looks really good. So they're pretty tough. And I like my sleeper is Silo as well, as we saw them with Tiana Ellison, who can score big time and dominate the game and actually beat any of these teams if she's on her game. So I think there's a sleeper in Ida Bell and Silo, but I think the head of the class is Washington, Bethel, and Jones. They're Jones teams, but I like them. I think they bring down the gold ball.
Mark?
3A boys.
Here
Okay, never mind. Tiana Ellison deserves. She needs a Division I scholarship. She is a talented player that's getting better and better. I think she's deserving of that. I really like the combination at Bethel of Josie McGehee and Parker Stevenson, and Bethel's deserving. Washington's schedule has not been difficult, and it's no disrespect to that team. They've got a great program. Year in and year out, they're very good, but they have not faced the Arkansas Tournament of Champions. They also lost to Dale earlier in the season, and they lost to Lincoln Christian, and I just don't think Washington's faced that kind of talent. Jones has a different gear when they get to the state tournament. I think it's the way that they practice and the way they prepare all through the season. They're not scared to lose games in the regular season. I've got Jones as the champion, and if it's fair to call Bethel a dark horse, I would say Bethel is the dark horse. Those 2 teams were supposed to play and might play at the end of the year. I'm not sure if that game is still on or not. That would be played next Monday, but I got Jones to win the championship.
Well, speaking of not being afraid to lose games, let's go over to Class 3A boys. The Millwood Falcons are your defending champs. Of course, that dramatic game winner a year ago, 10-10 right now as we tape this, but we've many a time seen Millwood go into the playoffs with a less than stellar record, and then that second weekend of March, they're holding that gold ball above their head. So, Joe, let's start with you. What are you looking at on the 3A boys side of this? Can the Falcons repeat?
I got some news today, and I didn't know this, and had I not got this news, I would pick Millwood to repeat. But I hear Jay Nichols, he's injured, and he's not going to play for the rest of the season. So if he doesn't play, I think it makes things a lot more interesting, because he was the one guy, as we seen Marcus, we did that game in the finals where he showed why he was one of the top ranked freshmen in the country. So if he doesn't come back and he doesn't play, I think it makes this much more interesting. I like Metro. I think they're good, but my dark horse and the team that's been there, I like Roland because of the experience they've gotten there. They hadn't won it, but they've had a few good teams, as we remember a few years ago, where Stevie Clark and the Youngblood kid have the shootout where they both go for nearly 50 points. So Roland's been there and been in that situation. But my dark horse, I'm going to go with Crooked Oak, Mark, the team we saw the other day. They have a phenomenal point guard. He's small, but he's very quick, very good finisher, athleticism, only about 5'7", probably. I may be giving him an inch or two.
I got 5'6", but can go.
Can score at will and able to control a game with his speed. So if he can get it going and get hot, He's a guy that may can sneak a first round upset of one of those top seeded teams. I like them. There's my dark horse.
There was some breaking news here on Squirtle.tv. So,
That's
I
too
mean,
bad.
if that's the case, yeah, absolutely. That changes the landscape quite a bit for Class 3A boys. Mark, are you scribbling through any teams on your list there as Joe breaks the news with us?
I don't think it rules Millwood out. I think that they're still really talented, and I wouldn't be afraid to place a bet on them even without Jaden. They're very good. I don't think the rest of Class 3A is as good as maybe it's been in the past. And if you look at the teams from Southern Oklahoma, Marlowe, Purcell, Lindsay have all kind of taken turns beating each other. Purcell may be the best team of that group. So I think you can't count out Purcell there. Tim Bart, longtime coach, is at Claremore Sequoia. They've got a good team this year too. It's wide open. I still would probably favor Millwood. It was cool to be in the Crooked Oak gym the other night. That is an older gym. Can any of you guys name who? By the way, they retired the jersey the other night. It was a pretty spectacular ceremony. They turn out the lights and they retire Atkins Freeman's jersey. But there is a special banner hanging in that gym for a famous professional athlete from Crooked Oak. Can anybody name him?
You stumped me.
It is Detroit Tigers pitcher Milt Wilcox, who played in the big leagues for a long time, that is a graduate of Crooked Oak, who does not have a glorious athletic past. So anyway, that was cool to go kind of watch a little bit of that game the other night. So I'll be pulling for Crooked Oak to make some noise. It's been a while since they've done something athletically on the boys' side.
I remember a couple of years ago, I was talking to the AD at Crooked Oak, and they won a state soccer championship, and it was the first state championship they won. What's that?
No, I'm just kidding. I said except for soccer. I don't want to diminish that program.
They had won a
basketball been tough.
Yeah, well, first state championship team championship in school history a couple of years ago. So you're right. The athletic tradition there is not so good.
Well, who is good, Tom?
You know what? I was scribbling a little bit, but since Mark went ahead and do it, I'll go ahead and I'll put it down here how I wrote it down. I have Millwood, not knowing about the injury, but I'll go ahead, and if Mark's going to go with them, I'll go with them too. 4-2 against 6A schools this year, the defending Class 3A champion. That record, nothing great, 10-10. They got a lot of returners from a year ago, and they had some move-ins as well that made them a little bit better. I think Metro Christian, 19-2 on the season. They're back-to-back losses at Holland Hall and Victory Christian. And I like Purcell as well a little bit as one of those contenders. My dark horse, I'm going to go up here to Northwest Oklahoma and just let's throw the Alva Gold Bugs in there. They're 19-3. Their losses are to 4A Catoosa and Kingfisher. They were upset by Chisholm as well. We won't forget about that one. But Kyler Pinko is a really good player for them. And we'll see what the Gold Bugs can do if they can make a run. The whole town of Alva will be down there if they do.
They skirted Blackwell in the district, so they've got a better chance.
Yeah.
That Chisholm loss, and no disrespect to Chisholm, because I think they have, gotten better as the year progressed, but that was a head scratcher for Alva. Of course, last year, Alva was kind of a team that I thought could make a run at the title, got upset by Hennessy at the regional in the first round, then didn't make it out of the regional. So that's something that, the Gold Bugs can use that. Coach Shane Feely over there. In the mid-'80s, we made up one of, if not the most dominant pitcher first base combo in Kingfisher T-ball league history. So he and I go way back. And Joe, that Douglas Rowland 4A championship game a few years ago with Stevie and Youngblood just trading shots, that was one of the more entertaining title games that you will watch. And if you guys have a chance to go find that film somewhere, go watch that, because that was just two guys just making bombs, and just such a great game and a great atmosphere there. So let's go down to 2A now. We'll go on to the 2A girls side of it. Dale, the number one ranked team in the state. Amber Pocasset got a long winning streak going right now. Just recently beat Okarche on Okarche's home floor. Pecola, the defending state champ. Howes, always, a team that you got to worry about. Tom, let's start with you. 2A girls. You think Eric Smith and the Lady Pirates are going to get it done, or what are you thinking?
I do. I like Dale to win the state championship. I had a chance to see them at Cashin. Brooke Rutland's a really good player for them. 21 wins since that opening night loss at Preston. As we talked about earlier, I saw him beat Silo at the Cashin tournament. Contenders, Pecola, of course. Defending state champions. They lost 3 at the TOC, which that makes your record look bad, but there's nothing wrong about that or nothing bad about that at all. And then Merritt, 20-1 out west, lost their opener, won 20 straight. They've got 3 wins over Hammond, a really good team in Class B, 8 top 20 wins as well. And my dark horse is Howe. They've won a couple state championships in the past 3 or 4 years. They've won 8 of 10 here down the stretch. They're on a pretty good roll going into the postseason.
Joe?
I think it's Dale, fellas. I watched them, had the chance to watch them a couple times at the Cashin tournament. I just think the way they're able to play, their style, they can shoot it. They pressure, they're able to speed you up. I think they just may be too much. And then playing in the shadows of those guys, the legends of the town. I think there's a lot of pressure on those girls to get it done. But I think both of those, I think Dale is the favorite, and boys as well. I think we'll all agree. But I think the girls, they sweep 2A, and they sweep it with a girls and boys championship. I do like Merritt. Pocasset is playing really well. But Pecola, I wouldn't sleep on Pecola, as you said earlier. The state champion of a year ago. I just like teams with experience. If that's been in that moment and it's been there, I think they're able to function a lot better on when you talk about this level. But I think Dale is the clear-cut favorite for me. I think they cut down on that for sure.
In the last few years, I don't know if Dale's been the best team, in any of the years. Maybe they have, but they've also, they've had some hard luck at the state tournament, some really tough losses for them to take. So you got to wonder if maybe they don't get some of that karma back this year. Mark, are you seeing that or something different?
Well, I'm going to pick Eric Smith as the coach that spent the most on his wardrobe, and I'm just going to make a plea to him. As it's okay now to wear a sports shirt and whatever else. You can logo up a little bit. You can put a pullover on. The suits. It just makes me uncomfortable to see somebody looking that good on the bench. His team also looks good. The reason that Amber Pocasset is on a long winning streak is because they did lose to Dale early in the season, and they're not undefeated. Alyssa Parker is tremendous. She's only a sophomore. Pecola helped lead them to the state championship last year, but I think Class 2A could be a double gold ball at Dale.
I knew Eric Smith back when he had hair on his head and none on his face, and now he's going with the Joe look, slick up top and got the scruff. Well, I haven't seen Eric this year, but I do have a story with Eric. Played in a golf scramble with him here at Kingfisher National.
Was he suited up?
What's that?
Was he wearing a vest and a suit in the golf tournament?
Well, he dresses just as pretty for golf as he does for as he does for basketball. He's a better basketball coach, but I played against him actually when we were paired together with his group, and he had you probably know this name, Mark, Rayan Gibson on his team. He can golf. Professional golfer, and really was just a few not too long removed from making the cut at the British Open, and we beat their butts. So I made sure to let him know about that, and every time I see him. But
so you're saying he has
Gibson in a scramble? What? How much did you guys cheat,
dude? Here's the deal.
No, just stop. I don't even know. Whatever you say here has no credibility.
Kingfisher National. It was one of those tournaments where you buy the ball, the extra ball, and this wasn't you got one extra shot a hole. You could use that ball on every shot. So basically, you had 5 people on your team. Somebody could hit it twice. So basically, Rain got 2 shots on every hole because he wasn't going to let Eric Smith hit the ball. But yeah, we were up 2 holes going into the final, 2 strokes going in the final hole. Beat him by a stroke, and ask Eric. He can't deny
great upsets of all time.
We lit his butt up that day, and and made him like it. Now they had one guy on their team who was about 6'10" and playing with clubs that were probably 8 inches too short for him, but it doesn't matter. We lit their butts up that day. So let's go on to 2A boys, and I think this is going to be the most difficult for everybody to pick on our panel. Just really wide open. And no real clear-cut favorite in here. I think Dale did win it last year, defeated Cashin in the finals. But Mark, I'll start with you. Just close your eyes and throw the dart and tell me where it lands.
Dale's the team to beat. I think Hennessy with my man Brady Page and my homeboy Keith Fletcher from Blackwell on the bench, as well as my high school coach David Page, is going to make it tough on anybody. They're not going to be easy to beat. Preston's pretty good. They pushed Dale into overtime, their toughest game of the season, outside the Tournament of Champions. Of course, Forsyth didn't play in that game, but I think those are the two teams that can challenge them the most. But Dale is the 2A team to beat.
Yeah, and David Page, another highly overqualified assistant coach. I think either sometime right around the Christmas break, I think is when he hopped on the bench. Brady said, "Yeah, he's already getting bored," so he started helping us. I figure he's worth a couple of points a game. Yeah, he probably is worth a couple of points a game. So yeah, David Page, an assistant coach with his son Brady Page there at Hennessy. Tom, you've seen a couple of these teams.
So what would be more satisfying, Dale winning a second gold ball in 2A or winning the TOC?
Well, honestly, I mean, it wins to me. It means more to win a state championship, but I think in 25 years they're going to talk about the TOC more.
I would say this: listen, the TOC does not matter as much as they don't win state.
Yeah,
I mean, it's nice, but I agree with Swish. I think the gold ball is what you're ultimately playing for.
Yeah. But yeah, Mark's exactly right. If they don't win state, that TOC it doesn't taste quite as nice there.
They'll be very satisfying though, that run they made in late December to win that Tournament of Champions. Because as a small school guy growing up, they were playing for all the small schools across Oklahoma, and where I'm from up in Kansas too. But a small school guy loves seeing a small school win the TOC, and I think that Dale is going to roll through 2A boys, 29-game winning streak at this point, 11-0 against ranked teams this season. You know, Preston's going to be a contender there. They lost to Dale in overtime. Hennessy 17-3, 4 ranked wins. And you talked about Brady Page. I mean, I like what Brady's done. He's really built a nice program at Hennessy, a very consistent program since he has been there. Let's see, my dark horse. I'm going south. I'm going down to Calera. They got a kid, Devin Brown, 6'4" junior, can shoot. And I watched some highlights of him when I was prepping for something here a couple of weeks ago, and went back and said, "Hey, that Calera team, they're in area 4, and I could see Calera making a run behind Devin Brown, a couple of pretty good teammates. They can shoot the ball pretty well down there in the southern part of the state."
You know, and before I go to you, Joe, I don't know about the rest of you guys, and I don't know. I wasn't blown away when Dell won the Tournament of Champions. Now, I think Edmond North would have been a tough matchup for him, and so it'd been interesting to see how that game went. Of course, Crossings took care of that for him in the first round, but you know, looking at the teams that were there and knowing who was there and what Dell had, I don't know. I guess I wasn't as blown away as a lot of the rest of the state was. Maybe just because 2A is attached to it, that's what everybody was so surprised by. But knowing what Dale had, that result didn't just blow me away. That Tournament of Champions weekend. Anybody disagree with me?
Blow me away? No, but
I mean, I was impressed.
Edmond North Memorial in there. I mean, I almost get what you're saying, Swish. They're really talented, but I think to beat that field is something else, because these teams are all talking about. They're all potential state champions. I mean, and a 2A team hadn't done it since New Lima in the 70s. I'm not trying to really strongly disagree with you, but I'm just saying is that I get what you're saying. I think you know a lot about high school basketball, know how good that team is, and they played together and they've got some experience, but I still think it was an unbelievable accomplishment. Yeah.
That's why I hesitated to even say that, because I'm not trying to diminish what Dale did, because I mean, it truly was amazing. But to me, when I looked at it, I was like, man, Dale really could win this. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, and they did. Joe, Tom's got something.
I will say this really quick about the TOC. It is a no-win situation for those 5A and 6A schools, because for them, it's just a tournament. They're playing those big schools and other tournaments all year long and during the regular season. That is a huge thing to hang on the wall for the smaller schools. To even win a game or two, there's a big deal. That's just it. Those bigger schools, they're not going at it with as much, they're not as fired up about it as Dale would be, or some of those smaller schools, where it's the biggest thing they do all year, other than win a gold ball.
There was no 2A team winning it the year that Joseph Atkins was the MVP and knocked off a Booker T. Washington team that had a bunch of pros on it. So we should probably let him talk about the Tournament of Champions before we do anything.
Well, that's who I opened it up to, really, but then Mark took it, and then Tom.
I'm sorry,
ran
my
it.
bad.
I'm
I
just-
can't get this right tonight.
I'm just kidding, but Joe, are you going to be the man who goes out there and picks somebody other than Dale to win Class 2A boys?
Hello, guys. Joe Atkins here, Tournament of Champions, Hall of Famer, inductee 2003. No, hey, I don't know much about that tournament at all. No, but I will say this. I think now with Dale and winning it last year, I think it's a bigger accomplishment to win the Tournament of Champions. I mean, of course, I think they would have had a difficult time if they would have played Edmond North. I think that would have been extremely tough for them to win that game. Yeah. But you can't take away what they done, as they had to go three games in a row against bigger classes, and they were able to outlast. I wasn't all the way surprised, but the size disadvantages, I didn't know if they could overcome that. And
rebounding. Yeah.
Rebound. Yes. They were able to rebound against those bigger teams, and they were small. I mean, they are the true small town team where they move it, but they have one guy in Dayton Forsyth that can beat you off the dribble, can shoot it, a mid-major player for sure, maybe even getting a little attention from a couple high majors as he visited Purdue. I think, Mark, when we were getting ready to see, when we saw him that night, they were headed to Purdue the next day, as he's getting attention from the number one team in the country. So when you have a guy that good and you have guys around him that have played together and they grew up together and they can flat out shoot it with anyone in the state, no matter the class, and they're not afraid. So I think in 25 years, they'll talk more about winning that TOC, because I think now they just expect to win it. I think there's only, if Forsyth gets hurt, of course, it would bring everyone back, and maybe a Preston can get him, but if he's there, it's just they can win it with any other player being injured. As long as he's on the floor, then that he's just that good, and especially on that level, that I just can't see anyone beating that Dale team.
Well, I'm really disappointed in you guys that nobody had the guts to go out there and pick somebody different. So let's go on down to Class A girls now. Sealing last year surprised me. I thought they were a year away. I thought this was their year. They knocked off Hydro Weekly in the state championship game, 47-46. Of course, Hydro Weekly was at the tail end of a really great run for the Lady Bobcats program there. Sealing has done nothing to deter us from thinking that they could very well win it again this year. Of course, Brady Hamer doing a fantastic job. Caddo made a good run at the holiday tournament over the break, and also really talented team. Mark, you got an up close and personal look at Sealing on Saturday night at Lomega High School, as the Lady Cats had just an amazing third quarter, 32-3, and blew that game wide open. I got to say, you're probably hard pressed to pick against them after seeing them in person.
The Lomega concession stand would be a great place to take a date for Valentine's Day. I don't think it's open. It might be, but it's fantastic. Sealing outscored Lomega 32-3 in the third quarter last week. They have experience winning the state championship. They are versatile. They're tall. They're athletic. They can interchange different parts. They all shoot the three really, really well. It's a team that Joe would be really proud of. He'd probably take their money if they shot, but it'd be close. I mean, he'd have to at least take his warm-up jacket off. Caddo's lost two of their last three. They didn't win the Bertha Teague, but I think it's another gold ball for Brady Hamer, which would be, I believe, number 6 for him. Is that correct? That's all coming here in a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah. Yes. So not going against the Lady Cats, and of course, got Brian Gore on the bench there, a Hall of Famer himself, Oklahoma State University, a fantastic pitcher for them. And Brian, an accomplished athlete himself. Tom, who are you looking at in Class A girls?
Well, I had a chance to see Sealing a couple of weeks ago at the Squirtle Festival when they beat Hooker that afternoon. You know, what's crazy about it, no seniors. There's no seniors on this team, which means that, just like we've been saying for like the past 10 years at Sealing, just watch out, because it's going to keep coming back. And they're led by a couple of coaches' kids, Bracy Nyberg and Tegan Hamer. Very, very good players. They just roll them out there at Sealing. I was going to ask you, do we know, Caddo, I know they played ranked teams and lost. They've lost their last 2 or 3. Do we know if there's any injuries there? Or it's just a matter of playing good teams. Do we know about that at all?
I've not heard of any injuries, but
Yeah. I just saw they've lost 2 of the last 3, like Mark was saying as well. I've got them as a contender. I've got Sealing as the champion. And I'm going to throw a dark horse at you. And this is a team that was way down in the rankings. OBA, they're 19-2 right here. Their campus is about a mile as the crow flies from my house. Their 2 losses were to Okarche both times. I think that it's usually Area 1. I think it's Area 4 this year at the Stride Bank Center in Enid. With Garber losing their best player, I think that really opens up a door for a second team. Sealing's going to be the first team that gets to state, but I think Garber with Layla Washington getting hurt and she's out for the year. They were 19-0 when she got hurt, and they've lost 3 of the last 4. But I think a team like OBA, who kind of under the radar, could be a team that makes a run. I know some people that are playing out, some parents of kids that are playing out there, and they're playing really well. I'd like to see what OBA can do playing in their hometown as they get to the area tournament.
Short drive over to the Stride Center. Joe, Class A girls.
I think it's too hard to. For me, Sealing. As you guys talked about, just experience. I thought last year they probably were. They made their run just a year early. They're back again, and as you say, they're just reloading. And no seniors this year, so we expect nothing else. I expect another championship and then another one the year after, as they've just kind of figured things out and continued their success over the past decade. No one's been able to beat them. Caddo, I mean, some of these teams I always, because I like to go watch small schools, so I know the names. I can form. It's like they've been there a while. They'll have an opportunity. I don't think anyone can be Sealing, but my dark horse, I'm going to say Surreal. I like Surreal in that ball club.
Of course, a few years ago, Sealing completed a run of 4 state championships. You had the Gorg twins, who are now playing at Southwestern, who were such a big part of that. Their younger sister is on this team. She is also a twin. So two sets of twins in that family right there. But, a Gore, a Nyberg, Hamer, it's just, again, last year I thought they were a year away, and I thought they really had a good shot to win a couple in a row. But and Brady Hamer's going to hate me saying this, but, a legit shot now to win 3 in a row. And I thought it was a really impressive win they had over Riverside. A lot of people were high on Riverside, and what Sealing did to Riverside was just really impressive. But, if you can go 4 in a row and then have a chance to go 3 in a row, man, what a career.
I got to ask really quick, because Mark was there. What was Kevin Llewellyn's face looking like when they were getting taken down in the third quarter like they did?
I don't know. Yeah, Kevin took care of everything that we had at the concession stand. And, I do think that for Kevin, it was a great experience to try to play a team like that. And they hung in the game early, and Sealing kind of warmed down with some of their pressure. But we'll get to Class B girls here in a minute. And he's won 7 state championships. So those guys are going to be tough to beat in that class. And I think that he doesn't run from anybody. He plays a really tough schedule. I think that's great that those 2 teams scheduled the last 2 years and have scheduled games again.
I do have to say that if you do take a date to Lomega, it may be hard to get a second date when you say, "Hey, baby, here's your mess."
Yeah, gotta love Mark got his first mess at Lomega.
It was good. Everything
Saturday.
there is good. Ice cream, it's all good.
Yeah, of course, Nyberg is Kevin Llewellyn's niece, and she scored 21 points on him. So he probably a little bit happy for his own niece there.
I'll tell you what, everybody's in trouble if they put some NIL money together from that concession stand, because I heard what they made, and the whole state may be going there next year.
Hey, I tell you, their junior class, they worked their tail off, and they worked their tail off on them and their parents. And then when they're seniors, they take a heck of a senior trip. So they certainly earn it. So let's go over to the Class A boys now. Tushka, defending state champs, knocked off Garber last year. Probably not going to see either one of those teams make another run to the state championship, but you never know. Sometimes there's always some big surprises there. Is this, Mark, we'll start with you. Is this a year where there's a dominant team, or is this like one of those where you truly, I joked about the 2A boys, but do you throw the dart and see where it lands?
No dominant teams. One of the teams that I covered with Joe and the Trey Young Oklahoma tip-off this year is Riverfield from Tulsa. They made state last year. They're really good. They're rated number 9, but I think they got a chance to win it. At the top, you have Caddo. They beat Rattan by 2, lost to Vanoss by 2. So those teams are really kind of, if you go by the transit property, that they're all about the same. OK is good. I've seen Okarche. They're good. I've seen Sealing. They're good. Velma I've not seen, but they're good. They've lost. All these teams have only lost to teams above them in higher classes. To go back to the mess at Lomega, this is a mess. I mean, any team can win it. It's wide open. I don't think that there's a favorite. I don't think that there's a dark horse. I think there's a lot of teams that even to get to state, we could see a shakeup.
This might be one of those years where if you got your 8 teams and you played the state tournament 8 times, you might get 5 different champs. And also, if you started the playoffs over 8 different times, you might get just completely different fields in the state tournament because there's a lot of teams that have a chance to make it. Joe, we'll go to you next. Who do you see in Class A boys?
Yeah, I think I like Caddo. Is it Caddo? Caddo? What is it?
Caddo.
Caddo. I think I like Caddo. Their team, they've been number 1 all season. They played pretty well. This is one that I don't know a lot of teams. I know OK. I remember watching them a couple years ago. They had a couple kids that were on the circuit. My dark horse, though, I'm going to go with Okarche. I mean, anytime you can get a chance to get free chicken if you win state or win a playoff game, I'm sure those guys will be up for it. So I expect them to get there. They played really good this season. So I think they're a dark horse that can compete for a possible state championship in Class A.
Yeah, Okarche, Coach Aaron West, took over when his dad passed away a couple of years ago. Aaron was his assistant and then took it over. Of course, an Okarche alum himself, but he's been building that back up. And they've been kind of waiting on this group to get up there. They're pretty young overall, so they're talented, they're deep, but also might be a team of the future to look out for. The Okarche Warriors there. Tom, who Class A boys?
I've got Caddo and Okarche getting to that championship game. Caddo started off 14-0. They've lost. They're 3-2 in their last 5 ball games, but Okarche 22-2. Their 2 losses to Preston and to Hennessy, and now they've won 9 straight since they lost to Hennessy in the Three Rivers Tournament Championship game. Came back and beat Hennessy a couple weeks later. My dark horse is Sealing. I saw them play a couple of weeks ago here in Enid. They're 19-1, winning by an average of 20 points a game. Hudson Hamer, coach's son, leads. They got a big kid, 6'5" kid, Jace Norton, who transferred in from Hinton, who's a pretty good player as well. I think that Sealing could be joining the girls at the state tournament this year.
All right, so pretty solid pick there. Let's move on to Class B now, and we'll go to Class B girls. Start on that side of it again. Mark, a team that you just got to see. We just talked about it. The Lomega Lady Raiders, of course. One of their 2 losses this year was to Hammond, so they've lost to 2 number 1 teams all year long. Hammond got them in the finals of the Warrior Classic over there at Hammond. Pittsburgh, the defending champ, they upended Lomega. As Lomega was looking for 3 in a row last year, so you've got those 3 teams. Barnum always in that mix in Class B. Do you see anybody of those top 4 teams there, Mark, that could, outside of that top 4, that could make a run?
Possibly, but I think you named the top 4. I have seen Lomega. I have seen Varnum. I saw Caton Graham last year be the best player at the state tournament at Pittsburgh, lead that team to an undefeated season. Lomega lost to Hammond in the finals of their tournament in Hammond. I know that they would like a chance to get back at them. Varnum was the 3rd place team in the Cashin tournament, and they're really good across the board. I like Coach Hadley a lot. I think he's a Varnum native that really does a good job with both the boys and girls teams. Got a chance to take both of them to state. Anything can happen here. I think Lomega is the favorite. I think this year Varnum is, if you want to call them a dark horse, like you said, I think they're a prohibitive top 4 team, but I think that they've got a good chance to win state. They've had some tussles with Lomega too in the past.
Joe?
I think I'm going to say Lomega. Although Hammond did beat them early in the year. As we know, anytime you play a tournament going on a home team, another home team's court, that's extremely hard to win, especially small town. When you talk about the really good teams, it's hard to win on the road. But getting on a neutral site, I think you have to favor Lomega. As you said, I think they're going for 3 out of 4. Pittsburgh last year, probably with the upset and winning the state. I like Barnum. I think those teams are the top 4 teams, but like the other 2, I think Lomega cuts the nets down. I could see them playing against Hammond again and getting there and have a chance to avenge that loss. But I mean, Pittsburgh and Varnum, I'm not going to count those out. We saw Varnum early in the year, as they were playing probably a little higher competition, and they had some really good opportunities. And I think it prepares them for the games where they have to play a Lamega and a Hammond. It shows that intensity that they have to play with. So I think they'll be prepared and they'll have an opportunity. But if I just have to bet money, I'm going to go with Lamega.
Tom?
Yeah, I'll go with Lomega as well. 14 state championships in school history. They got something going on out there in Western Kingfisher County. Their 2 losses to Sealing and Hammond, which, like Mark said, they'll play anybody, and that bodes well when you get to the postseason. Now, I had a stat sheet on them, which when I did the game a couple weeks ago against Garber at the Squirtle Festival. And, this is typical numbers. These girls can shoot. Abby Swart, 47% from three-point range. Darcy Roberts, 43% from three-point range. Those are just, huge numbers. Now, Abby got hurt. She got hurt early on in the Garber game and didn't play the rest of that ballgame. I'm not too sure if she came back. I think Adam told me she came back and played, but not so great against Sealing the next week. But I think that could be a key, is the health of Abby Swart if she is, possibly still a little bit nicked up. Hammond, interesting when you look at that coaches poll, the OSSAA rankings poll. Boy, all the coaches they picked Hammond as their number 1 team, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I think Lomega Hammond's could be a great championship game. Hammond has lost 3 of the last 4, but they played a pretty tough schedule as well. Pittsburgh, 4 top 10 wins this season. They've won 12 straight down the stretch. And my dark horse, I don't even know where Buffalo Valley is, but Buffalo Valley's 21-4, 7 top 20 wins. They've won 9 of the last 10. And I kind of thought the name of the school was cool, so I threw it out there.
It's down there by Red Oak, isn't it?
Talahena address. Yeah. But there's not even a gas station there. So, by the way, Joe shot 104% in the McGinnis tournament. So those Omega girls are pretty good in the upper 40s. But
Downtown Abbey is a headline I had for her earlier this year.
That's a good one.
But yeah, she did. She missed after that. I guess it was a pretty rough injury. She was pretty beat up. Had a black eye, and so she missed the Tuesday game. I think she came back the day before, played a little bit against Timberlake before the Sealing game, but definitely not 100%. So it will be imperative for them to get Abby Swart at Lomega healthy if they want to make a deep run. And then a name to look out for over the next couple of years, if she really pursues basketball, is Henley West from Hammond. Big, tall girl. It's got a lot of schools, I think, who are looking at her progress and development to see what she's going to do out there. So I think she's just a sophomore this year, so it'll be interesting to see what she can turn into. So our last picks of the night, Class B boys, is a light at the end of the tunnel here. Glencoe, your defending state champ. Rolfe was the runner-up last year. Of course, that came down to the wire. But the big question is, can anybody beat Fort Cobb Broxton this year? Joe, I'm going to start with you. The Mustangs, one of the great programs in the state, no matter if they're in Class A or B. Can you see anybody beating number 1 Fort Cobb this year?
Listen, my guy, Coach Scott Hines, he knows how to win at this time of the year. I remember a few years ago when he had both his boys, and they basically just ran through. They just dominated small school basketball, won a couple games versus some higher class teams as well. So I'm not going to bet against him. I think Rolfe will have a chance. I like their team and what they do. My Stringtown as well. They probably haven't been back since Tyus McGee and that crew with CJ. What was the kid's name that went to Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Washington.
Yeah, CJ Washington and that crew. So that I look for them to get back and be in the big house. My sleeper, though, I'm going to take Kenta. Kenta, a couple years ago, they made it to the state finals. So I'm going to go with them as they get back. And I think they have an opportunity to compete with Fort Cobb, but I think they're just a little bit better than the rest.
Tom, agree, disagree?
I like Fort Cobb Broxton, and it's a nice story. It's going to be a good story. If Scott Hines can win that state championship because of what he went through with COVID a couple of years ago. I mean, he's a fighter, and he showed it battling COVID, and it's so great to see him back there. They're 7-1 against ranked teams, which I like those stats for Class B schools, because when you've won 7 games against ranked teams, everybody's bigger than you. You know, the Class B schools are your size, but you're playing the Class A and the Class 2A schools and winning most of those games as well. So I like Fort Cobb Broxton. I saw Roth play at the TOC. I called their game where they played Bartlesville and gave Bartlesville a pretty good run. I think Broth will be there as well. A couple, they were 0-3 in the TOC, but definitely played well in that tournament against those bigger schools. Calumet, 22-1. Don't forget about them. Pretty close to Swish over there. And I guess that's actually not Kingfisher County. It's the county south of there. But and I'm going to bring up Buffalo Valley again, 22-3, 2 losses this season to Vanoss. But they have wins over Sequoia, Tahlequah, and Henrietta, stepping up and playing bigger schools. And I don't know, I may be the king of Buffalo Valley by the time this whole thing is done. And my another dark horse I'm going to throw out there, way out in the Panhandle, just because they need some love out there in the Panhandle. Goodwill is 20-2. Both losses to Laverne this season, a good Laverne team. And so we'll see what happens.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Not so fast. You've greased the wheels of all of Garfield County, Tom, by picking everybody to be a dark horse that you're close to. But I talked to Coach Gray earlier this year for a feature in Trey Young's magazine, and it's a great story. Buffalo Valley went to the state tournament last year. They finished second to Preston in that tournament at Okmulgee earlier this season. So they're definitely legit. Coach Gray scheduled Roth earlier in the season, and they played without their best player, who's back, and Roth won that one. This is a class with a bunch of great coaches. Like Joe said, Scott Hines is one of my favorite. Larry Johnston is one of my favorites at Ross. I thought that last year he got beat in a really tough circumstance in the state championship game against Glencoe, and he handled it with incredible class. Their losses, 2 to Vanoss, 3 in the Tournament of Champions, and they played really well in the Tournament of Champions at times. They're really good. Fort Cobb's only lost to Newcastle in a close game in a tournament in Anadarko. Calumet lost to Okarche early in the season by 3. They're in this one. So I think Class B is another class that is really going to be competitive and fun to watch. But I think the 2 teams to beat are Roth and Fort Cobb.
Jacob Mayfield, coach at Calumet, has got a really good young team. Of course, Mayfield has led his team to has led Calumet to a state title in his career there, played for and won a state title as a player himself out at Eric Sweetwater. Pretty good golfer too, Jacob Mayfield, former club champion here at Kingfisher National. So there's some.
Eric Sweetwater is the alias that Joe uses when he goes out of town. That is his code name when he checks into hotels.
Yeah, again, good to know. But I guess all the ladies are going to know that now. So Joe, you're going to have to change that name. You're going to have to find.
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to blow your cover.
Maybe try Amber Pocasset, see if that one works for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start. I mean, who needs enemies when I got friends like Mark? You know.
Yeah, and Tom, you can be the king of Buffalo Valley, but all the people at Balco are still mad at you, so it doesn't really. So you can't go up there. But yeah, I heard Goodwill's got a couple of really big players, a lot of size up Goodwill. Be interesting to see what they can do when they kind of get back here. And play some of this competition over here on this side of the state. So, hey guys, I know we've been at this for a while now. Really appreciate it, but worked our way down.
Ever incredible, stupendous, most amazing playoff preview show, spectacular.
Yes,
sweet.
You guys,
all of those,
memorize that, and because you're going to be quizzed on that wording from here on out. But yeah, this has been the Squirtle Hoops playoff preview here on Squirtle.tv. I want to say thanks to Joe Adkins, Tom Nelson, Mark Rogers. Of course, playoffs are beginning this week for Class A and B. So, here in a month, we're going to be at the big house. But in the meantime, you're going to see a ton of playoff games here on Squirtle.tv. So, and on top of that, just using your Squirtle app, because that is the place to go to keep up with up-to-date scores throughout the entirety of the playoffs. I know that myself, I'm just constantly on that Squirtle app to figure out, hey, what's happening over in 3A girls today in this regional tournament, something like that. But on top of using it, we're going to have a ton of games here with our Squirtle Network schools. So it's going to be a fun ride through the playoffs. Again, thank you, Joe. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Mark. This has been the Squirtle Hoops Playoff Preview. We'll see you next time.